Welcome to the Idea Talks, where we discuss big ideas. The Idea Talks is a bi-weekly podcast with Josh Tice and other leaders on big ideas for life, leadership, and ministry. And I'm your co-host, Drew Planencia, and we are glad you're here. For more information on this podcast, visit ideanetwork.church.
Hey man, this is the part of the episode where we're supposed to advertise my book.
All right.
So what do you think we should say?
I don't feel bad about it. It's not a shameless plug. It's literally your book. You've put a lot of work into it.
That's a good point. So you need to pick up a copy. And hey, here's the thing. If you buy a copy and you didn't like it,
right?
Drew said he'll pay for you to ship it back.
It's not what I said. At least an In-N-Out burger, I'll ship to them.
You'll ship them.
If it's on the East Coast, it'll be all spoiled, but it's fine. Hey, I'm in this book too.
You are. You're actually in this book. And I say some things that people don't know about you. It's going to be great. I tell some stories.
All right.
Are you?
Where can people find this book at?
Oh, that's right.
And what it's called.
Okay, so you can pick up this book.
Right.
It's called The Quest for Friendship.
The Quest for Friendship. Insert Galleon's music here. I'll do that in post.
That really is what it is.
Right. It's happening right now. It's
the Idea Network publishing arm of our network has produced this awesome resource, and I really do appreciate it. It's exciting. It really is a discussion of friendship, and I want you to pick up a copy at ideanetwork.church in the shop tab. It's the very first resource at the very top. You can pick it up, and if you put in the promo code free shipping is yours.
All right.
Yeah.
There it is.
Go do it now.
The Quest for Friendship. Welcome to this edition of the Idea Talks. Thanks so much for stopping by. On today's episode, we have Jason Shuler from a session audio recently at the Idea Summit in 2021 here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to tell you a little bit about Jason before we get into the description of his session. Jason is a pastor of Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina, which is the town where he grew up. He works primarily with global missions, connect groups, and young families. Jason has been preaching since he was 15 and continues to travel and speak as his schedule will allow. He is currently pursuing an MA in clinical mental health counseling at Liberty University. He and his wife Desiree have 3 children, Ethan, Zoe, and Sophia. Today, he's going to be addressing a much-needed topic for our ministries right now, and that is millennial management. A large part of millennials in ministry are no longer at the entry level of leadership, nor are they generally the senior pastors yet. Whether you have a millennial in the middle of your organization or you are the millennial in the middle, there is a wealth of knowledge to be gained in working with millennials and their ability to help your leadership thrive. That's just a cliff note of Jason's session today. I hope you listen to it intently, take notes, share best practices on Facebook, on Twitter, and hit us up on Instagram if you can. Without any further waiting, here is Jason's session on millennial management.
Let's open up in a word of prayer, then I'll introduce myself. And then the session, what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Thank you guys for coming. Let's start with a word of prayer. Father, we love you and we're thankful for just the opportunity to be around each other, to fellowship in the gospel, to, Lord, just to talk about different things, ideas that we've got in our mind, on our hearts that we can implement in our various areas of ministry. Lord, I pray that you bless this session and the others to follow today. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. My name is Jason Shuler. And this is my wife, Desiree, right here on the front. I told her she can go to another session. She said, nope, I'm going to come support you, and I appreciate that. So I'm glad that she's here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to jump into the session this morning. Desiree and I met in college my freshman year. We've been married for 11 and a half years. We have 3 kids. Ethan is 8, Zoe is 5, and Sophia is 8 months old. And we could not be happier to be here with you while we left them back home in North Carolina. It's been nice to get some sleep this week. We've lived in all 4 major U.S. time zones, California, Colorado, Oklahoma, and now North Carolina. We've done that in the past 8 years. So we've moved around a lot. We're in North Carolina now. We have no idea where we'll be next, but we like all the time zones, the 4 that we've been in. I serve at Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina. And if you know anything about North Carolina, the Triad area is Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point, and we are right smack dab in the middle of that. And the church has been around since the mid-'80s, and I serve in various capacities there. Missions pastor and small groups pastor. Those are my 2 main roles. Those are the things that I do most. I also teach a young families class. I preach the Sunday night service. I preach for my senior pastor when he's away. I oversee our rec and upward sports programs. Maybe some of you have those ministries at your church. I work in our counseling ministry, and then I'm currently pursuing a master's in clinical mental health counseling with Liberty University. And so I work a lot with counseling with young families, people in our church. I like to read books, and in my spare time, I sleep. And so I stay busy. I'm sure many of you do as well. My session today is originally titled Millennial Middle Management, but it's been shortened. But either way, we're going to talk about millennials today. Before we do, I just want to say thanks to the Idea Network, the Idea Summit. This is my first event. I've never been to an Idea Day. I've never been to an Idea Summit. And when they called and asked me to come, I thought, for real? Like, seriously? You guys want me to come and say something? They're like, yeah, we'd like for you to come. And so I'm just honored to be here. I've been to a handful of other conferences and just first class, top rate that they're doing here. And I couldn't be more happy to be here with you guys. And then I also want to thank you individually for coming to this session, because when I looked through Breakout Session 2, I wasn't even 100% sure I wanted to come to this session, because there's a lot of good speakers, there's a lot of good topics, and so thank you guys sincerely for coming to this session. I hope it's a help to you. We're going to have some questions at the end. I'm going to ask some questions in the middle. If I ask a question and you have an answer to it, I genuinely want to hear what you have to say. I'm a millennial, as many of you are, just by looking around in the rooms. Not all of us are. But I genuinely want to hear what your take is, because there's no one in this world who has a great pulse on all things of all millennials in every demographic everywhere, okay? And so because we all come from a different background and different churches and different experiences to millennials, I do want to hear some of the things that you have to say. So thanks for being here today. I'm going to start with a story. In the 1800s, Great Britain was in the process of colonizing the country that is now known as India. When the British settled in Calcutta, they missed home. And they wanted to be back home, but they couldn't be home because they were colonizing this new area. And so one of the things that they missed most about home in Great Britain was golf. Brits love their golf. They love the beautiful golf game that they have. I'm not much of a golfer. Maybe you know golfers, but I just get out there and whack. I get the most strokes of anybody out there on the golf course when I go. I'm not a big golfer, but they love their golf. And one of the things they decided to do when they got to Calcutta and they started establishing India, they said, we need to have a golf course that's gonna make us feel a little bit more like we're at home. And so that's what they did. They erected this beautiful golf course. Here's a picture of it. This is the Royal Calcutta Golf Club. And it's the oldest golf club in India. It dates back to the 1800s. But they started to play golf. One problem that they encountered in Calcutta that they had not seen in England was India was the home to thousands upon thousands of monkeys. And they were like, man, this is a little bit of a problem. The monkeys that were in the area close to the course would come out of the trees and they would walk on the course. And they would just kind of walk around and hang out. And sometimes they would approach the golfers. And sometimes you would hit a drive straight down the fairway only to have a monkey run across the middle of the fairway, pick up the ball, and throw it into the rough. And it was like, wow, this is kind of a drag. We did not anticipate monkeys. We don't have a monkey problem in England, but obviously they have a lot of monkeys here. And so they had a couple ideas of things that they were going to do because the Brits took their golf game very seriously. One solution is they tried to trap the monkeys. And they did this for several weeks. They would trap the monkeys, and then they would put them in some kind of vehicle, and they would take them to remote parts of India, and they would drop them off. It was pretty humane. They would just move them. They weren't killing monkeys, but they would trap them, and they would move them. But there were just thousands and thousands of monkeys. They could not trap all of them. Like, there were professional trappers who were taking these monkeys to other parts of India, and they just couldn't trap them all. The second solution they came up with was they built a tall fence around parts of the golf course to keep the monkeys out. Newsflash, monkeys can climb. They saw this as a little bit more of a challenge, and they started climbing the fences and getting over there. And can you imagine hitting the drive of your life and you get onto the green only to have a monkey pick up your ball and you never see it again, or they throw it in a sand trap or whatever? Ultimately, the only workable solution they were able to come up with was a rule change, and the rule change was this: you play the ball where the monkey drops it. True story. You play the ball where the monkey drops it. And when I think about that story, ultimately, it's interesting that they gave in and just decided to change the rules in order to accommodate not the golfer, but the monkey. Millennials are changing the rules. Culture is changing to adapt to the millennial. Now, that's not a political statement. There's no agenda behind that. It's simply saying that it's not intrinsically right or wrong. It's just true. The rules have changed, and we need a better understanding of what those cultural rules are in order to understand both our culture as well as millennials that are in our culture. So, the first question: who here is a millennial? Let me see your hands if you would admit. Okay, thank you for your honesty. Good. You can put them down. I've spoken on the topic of millennials a handful of times, and believe it or not, this is the question that is most often debated. Because there are some people who are millennials and they're like, I don't want to be labeled as a millennial, because there's a bad connotation sometimes with some millennials. No one wants to admit it. By definition, and you can find various definitions, millennials are born between 1980 and 2000. Now, there's debate on both ends of the spectrum. You look it up, you Google it, you'll find 81, 82, 83. That's kind of a gray area. They can claim Gen X like it's more glamorous or more popular or something. They can claim that, but if you're 1984, you were born in 84 or after that, you're pretty much stuck. You're stuck with us as millennials. I want to show you a chart here, and the reference is from Wendell is the author, 8 Innovations to Leading Millennials. I'll talk about that book in a few minutes. But this is probably one of the better charts that I like to use when referencing millennials. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1987, so I'm 33. I'm proud to be a millennial. I think for all the bad connotation that you can lend to millennials, there's a lot of good that comes from millennials, and I think we're seeing that more and more in our world. I'm proud to be a millennial. In 87, I kind of consider myself to be an elder millennial to those who were born in the 90s, but I tell kids today, I was born in the 1900s. They're like, oh my gosh, you are crazy old. How are you still alive? You were born in the 1900s. At the other end of the spectrum, I have a brother who was born in 1996, so he's officially a millennial, but he could claim Gen Z if he chose to, like that's any better than, us. So based on those, let me see your hands again. Who here is bold enough to say, I am in that millennial range? Let me see your hands. Good. Okay. Welcome. Thank you for raising your hands. We are the monkeys in the room. We're the ones that are changing the rules. You came to this session for one of 3 reasons. Number 1, you are a millennial. You are a millennial. The second reason you could have come to this session is because you work with millennials, you interact with millennials, or you seek to reach millennials. The third reason you would have come to this session is because all of the others were already full, okay? And I understand that. But I'm going to target specifically millennials and non-millennials. But before I do, I want to play a quick little game. And in order for us to do this game, I'm going to have all of you to stand. I know you just got comfy, but if you would stand up for just a minute, we're going to play a game. And I'm going to talk about the resources that I have here. Okay, this game is called Sit Down If, okay? Sit down if you took a picture of the Welcome to Las Vegas sign since you've been here. Sit down. Okay, a couple of you. Sit down if you live in the state of Nevada. I didn't get anybody there. Sit down if you've eaten at an In-N-Out burger since you've been in town. Oh, that got a lot of them. Nice. All right, sit down if you tried to get into another session, but you found out they were already full. No, I'm just kidding. Don't sit down. Sit down if you brought someone else with you to the conference. Anybody else came with you? Sit down. Sit down if you drove to the Idea Summit as opposed to airfare. Sit down if you've been at Idea Summit before. Do I have 3 left standing? Outstanding. You guys are my winners. 3 resources that we've got here. I'm going to let you pick first. Here are the 3 that I have. This book is called 8 Innovations to Leading Millennials. This is a phenomenal resource. Some of the things we're going to talk about I got from this book. The author is Benjamin Wendell, Windle. It's there on your sheet. But this is a phenomenal book. The second resource I've got is You Lost Me. This is by David Kinnaman, who's also the author of Unchristian. This is just a really good book as well. A lot of post-culture, postmodern things that you'll read in here. And then this is just a typical John Maxwell, The 17 Essential Qualities of a Team Player. You get first choice to the 3 books that I've brought today. Which would you like? There you are.
Thank you.
What do you guys want? I'll give you both. You guys figure it out. There you go. Josh told me to make sure you hit on resources. I'll talk about it some more. Kerry Newhoff has got a lot of great stuff on his website, blogs, podcasts about reaching millennials. Exponential, they do a lot of stuff. We go to their conference every other year. Churchanswers.com, that's Tom Rainer's site, and then the books that I just mentioned. So those are some resources for you to better grow in your understanding of millennials. In addition to the main points, I'm going to ask some group questions today. And when I do, I want to hear some of your feedback, your answers, your experience, your perspective. So let's talk about millennials. Here's the first question I'm going to ask for you guys. What are some words that you would use to describe millennials? Now, before you answer, this is not a catch-all that applies to all millennials. There aren't any words like that. In a minute, I'm going to ask you what phrases you would think about that are pretty common with millennials. But anybody have a word or maybe a couple words that you would use to describe millennials, whether you are one or not? Yeah.
Lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Lazy. Yep.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Yeah, that's a good one. What do you have?
Inconsistent.
Inconsistent. Yep. Yes, sir.
Individualistic.
Individualistic. Yes. Good. Yes, ma'am.
Misunderstood.
Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. Are you a millennial? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good. What else? Entitled. Yeah. I asked this question on one of my stories on Facebook or Instagram a couple weeks ago, just to hear what people were saying, and entitled was the one that came back the most popular, I think. What else? Any other words?
Creative.
Say again?
Innovative.
Innovative?
Creative.
Yeah, along the same lines. Good. Good. I want to read some of the responses I got on social media. Some of them were positive. Some of them were negative. One girl said flighty. Someone said tech absorbed. Someone else just said technology. Innovative, adventurous. Someone said innovative, creative, entitled, lazy. A lot of the words that we've heard. One person said work ethics or lack thereof. Not sure what she means by that, but here's one, and this is the one that stuck out to me the most. This person wrote entitled, and then in parentheses she wrote, I hate that I am in this group. That's what she said. And so when I read those responses and I think about some of those words, there are a lot of adjectives that can describe many, but not all millennials. And I won't talk about the ones that I wrote down because most of you have said all of them. What about some phrases that you would use to describe millennials? Maybe a bailiwick phrase or a motto or something that is pretty indicative of millennials. Any ideas you've got there?
They're looking for what's real.
Looking for what's absolutely. Yeah. They are looking for what's real, what's authentic. We'll talk about in a minute, but previous generations, the question of their generation is, what is truth? Millennials don't care so much about what is truth. They want to know what is real, what's authentic, what's something I can see, what's something I can feel. And that's great. Good. Any others? Any other phrases?
They're in a constant state of adaptation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think our world is that way, but it's so much more heightened when it comes to millennials. Good thought. Yep.
You only live once.
Yeah, YOLO.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
I need coffee.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Here's a couple. Tell me if you've ever heard this one. I'll just fake it till I make it. Yep. It's like the millennial motto for a lot of people I know.
Ministry motto.
Yeah, that's ministry. Yeah, that's good.
Said that before.
That's right. Here's one. When the question is asked, what should we do? Here's the millennials' response. Here's what you have to do. Here's what you have to do. They have no idea what to do. We have no idea. We have no clue what we're supposed to be doing. I had a younger millennial, and he was 21, 22 years old. He told me this 2 months ago. We're in conversation. He said, churches have got it all wrong, man. They got it all wrong. And I'm like, wow, okay, that is some statement. I said, let's elaborate. I said, what are churches doing wrong? And so he starts telling me about pastors who don't know what they're doing. They're missing the culture. He starts talking about coffee and all of these things. And I asked him, I said, well, where do you go to church? And my question was legit because I want to know if there's a church that you go to, if churches have got it all wrong, but you go to one that's got it all right, I want to know what church this is. What are they doing that's right? What are they doing that reached you? Genuinely, tell me, what church do you go to? To which he said, oh, I don't go to church. And I said, why not? And here was his response. I haven't found a church yet that checks all the boxes. Man, that hit me hard. So he lectured me on how to do church. He's never pastored a church. He's never planted a church. He doesn't even go to a church, but he's got it all figured out. He's a typical millennial. He's one of us. I want to ask a couple more introductory questions. This question is to millennials. Do you struggle to accept the moniker of millennials? Why or why not? Do you struggle to accept that?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't think I fit into it.
Okay.
I have a hard time. I pastor a church that's got probably 40 under the age of 35, and I can't understand their thought process.
Yeah.
I'm the odd one out.
You're the odd guy. Yeah. What else? Anybody else struggle to accept that moniker of millennial? You ever hear those boomers? Those dang millennials. That's what they say. Yeah, okay, boomer. That's our good response.
I feel like I embrace the moniker with other millennials that have embraced the positive aspects of millennialism, and I intentionally avoid the moniker with the people that I know have negative connotations.
Yeah.
So the misunderstood thing. So
Yeah.
when I'm trying to lead our older generation, I'm like, oh yeah, I agree, millennials are nuts, you know. But when I'm with other millennials, I'm like, yeah, we are forward thinking, you know.
How old are you? Are you on the cusp where it's close?
I'm 30, so
Okay,
yeah,
there you go.
yeah.
All right.
So
That's
it's that
great.
adaptation, you know.
Yeah. That's a great response. Good. Any others? Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I think it falls into even just the term of Christianity
Hmm.
nowadays. Is that everybody has this idea of what they think it should be or what it is. And, if I'm obviously labeled myself as a millennial, I want to be, I'm a millennial, but here's what it really means, right?
Yeah.
Here's what it should look like.
Yeah.
Same thing with Christianity, you know.
Yeah.
It's so thrown around, I'd rather just call myself a follower of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because they've taken it and turned it into something else. I think it applies to this as well.
It's a good parallel. Great thought. Very good. Any others? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I connect with the misunderstood part. It's very overwhelming for a lot of people, I think. Very confusing. The lifestyle of the baby boomers doesn't really exist anymore. So figuring that out is hard for a lot of people. I think a lot of millennials figure it out and do incredible stuff. It's
Yeah.
a great time to be alive, but it's also really painful for a lot of people.
Yeah. Good. To non-millennials, I'll ask this question. Those of you in the room that are not millennials, as an outsider, what have you found to be the most weird thing about millennials?
Video games.
Yeah.
Lack of motivation.
Okay. Yeah.
Inconsistency and the lack of reliability. Like you try to figure out what motivates them. Like what can you do to get a commitment that you can count on?
Yeah.
That's just been impossible. to
Yeah.
figure out.
Good.
Lack of ownership of responsibility.
Yeah, that resonates with a lot of people who work with millennials. Even millennials, I feel like I'm a pretty responsible person. But to hear you say that, and I look at my culture, I look at my generation, I think, he's not wrong.
Right.
You're right.
Unearned confidence.
Yes. Hence my story I told a minute ago. Yeah, it's unearned. We are entitled, and we are a professional on everything that we choose to say that we're a professional on. Kind of like Carrie talked about last night. I'm an artist, therefore you have to validate my art, my work. Good. According to Simon Sinek, I don't know if you guys listen to him or read him, millennials are a generation with lower self-esteem than previous generations. He says this: they've been told by their parents that they are special and they can have anything they want. And when they get into the real world, they realize they're not special and they can't have anything they want. Yeah. We grew up in the entitled participation trophy generation. That's where we are. That's where we've been. You insert the prevalence of social media. I've got to build up my self-esteem. I've got to make myself seem as important and as special as my mother told me that I was. My mom is the epitome of this. She has millennial kids. She has 3 boys. All 3 of us are millennials. And she called us. She was FaceTiming us this morning because she's got our kids. And she talked to me for a minute. She said, "Preach good." And I'm like, "You don't know why I'm here." It's okay. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your support. It's a talk, and I'm going to get banter. I'm not even going to explain it. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, that's it. My mom is the consummate encourager, and I love her for that. But that's what, boomer parents have done, is they've told us we're special, we're great. And then we get into the real world and we realize I am not as great as my mom thinks that I am. My wife will tell me, hey, you're not what your mom thinks you are. I live with you. I know. And it's like, hey, she lived with me for 18 years. She knows me, and she does it. We turn on notifications. So-and-so liked your post. We keep our volume up, and when we hear a ding, we get a text. And it's like, oh, yeah. This is still insufficient, not enough for the phone to ding or vibrate when we're being approved or contacted. Millennials also turn on their camera light that blinks when the phone rings. It's not enough that my phone is ringing or that I'm receiving a text message. I want to let off strobe lights to let all of you also know that I am important. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because I was in a session earlier, and there was a guy sitting a couple rows from me, and he was not a millennial, but he got a text, and I saw it, blinking at me. You text 8 people, 3 of them text you back. It's a strobe light feature happening. I want to read some statistics here. 2012 Harvard study talking about oneself through social media activates a pleasure sensation in the brain that is associated with food and money and sex. It's addictive. It's a hit of dopamine, and it feels good. The urge to be accepted, for everyone to like us. This is a true story. I knew of a millennial who would regularly screenshot her list of Facebook friends because anytime she lost a friend and her number went down and she was unfriended, she would go back and compare her friends list to her screenshots to find out where that person went, who they lost. I don't know how many friends she had. Let's say she had 821 friends. She screenshots them, and she drops down to 819. I had 2 people. I got to find out who they are. The level of insecurity with our generation is crazy. We put filters on everything. Look at me. My life is amazing. But truly, deep down, we're depressed. We're lonely. We're discouraged. Ministry's not going how I thought it was going to go. Marriage is not what I thought it was going to be. We're in a stage right now where we're 33 and we have 3 kids, and we're seeing the kind of parents that millennials are becoming. And it's different. It's going to change. And we're raising the next generation. I don't even know what they're going to be called yet, but these little kids right now, they're being raised by millennials, and that is altogether exciting and terrifying. But that's where we live. Here's another one. The Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology in 2014 says higher depression rates for elevated social media use. By the way, that's a 2014 stat. We don't live in 2014 anymore.
Yeah.
Do you think it's gotten better? I don't think so. Higher depression rates for elevated social media use. This is not anti-social media talk. Okay, this is not you need to get off Facebook, you need to get off Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But when it controls your life as it does many millennials, that's when it becomes a problem. We've never been more connected through social media and disconnected with reality at the same time as we are now. The result is there are no deep, meaningful relationships anymore. That's why conferences like this are so vital. They're so important to hook up with people and get together. Millennials will pencil it in. And then if something better comes up, it's okay. I'll cancel on them. I had something better come up. I had a bigger opportunity. I had a different group of friends that reached out to me. I think I'd rather hang with them. When in crisis, we no longer turn to God or another person. We resort here to our phones, to social media, to things like that. We live in an instant gratification society. 3 examples: Netflix, Amazon Prime, and DoorDash. Now, when Netflix first came out, some of you may remember this, especially the older ones in the room. You would go online and you would reserve what movie you wanted to watch, and they would put a DVD in the mail and mail it to you, and you'd get it in 2, 3, 4 days. I don't want to wait 2, 3, 4 seconds for my Netflix show to pop up. If I hit play, my kids are sitting there. They've never known what it's like. They didn't know. When I was a teenager, the show 24 came out with Kiefer Sutherland. It was like, you go to the bathroom during the commercial breaks. That's what you do. I had to get ready for bed like I'm brushing my teeth during a commercial break. Jack Bauer's hanging off a ledge somewhere, and here I am trying to brush my teeth. I got to get ready for bed. I got to get in the bed. And then they leave me on this cliffhanger. I got to wait a week minimum before I know what happens to Jack. These kids are like, hey, let's just watch the next episode, Dad. Hey, let's go. What are we doing? Why are we waiting 4 seconds on this to buffer? This is crazy. Is the Wi-Fi down? What are we doing? Can we upgrade our megabits per second, please? But my 8-year-old knows what that means. It's crazy. Amazon Prime, you order it today. You get it today. Sometimes tomorrow. Today, maybe. DoorDash, who's going to pay $11 for $5 of food? A lot of people. A lot of people do that. Dude, Taco Bell's down the road. 2 burritos, $4. I'd rather pay $12 and sit here and binge watch this show. It's like that doesn't make sense to me. But to a lot of millennials, it does. Among millennials, we're seeing increased suicide rates, depression, overdosing, all at all-time highs. In the clinical mental health field, which I'm living in right now with my classes and with counseling, this pandemic, I mean, I don't want to get political, but it is my opinion that the mandates and the restrictions are going to be far worse than the virus itself long-term psychologically. And the medical journals are coming with articles that would back that idea. But man, our mental health, we struggle, and millennials are no exception to that. Mental health is a real thing, and we need to take it more seriously than we do. This is according to Forbes and Business Insider. Both of these publications put this forth, but it's from the Harvard Medical School. They're finding since 2013, millennials have seen a 47% increase in major depression diagnoses. This is not mild to moderate depression. This is like, okay, let's talk about suicide. Is this an option for you? Is this something you've considered before? Have you thought about it? Have you talked about it? Have you considered it? Same source, the overall rate increased from 3% to 4.4% among 18 to 34-year-olds. Why is that? Because there's no satisfaction. There's no relationships. There's no interaction. We're tough to talk to. We say things on social media that we would never say to someone's face. Millennials don't have to break up with people anymore. You just ghost them. Yeah, you don't have to text them back. I don't have to turn on read receipts. Just ghost them. It's easy to avoid facing consequences, admitting failure, avoiding difficult conversations. I said this earlier, but previous generations asked, what is truth? But we're not asking that as millennials today. We want to know what is real. What is real? If your church has all the truth in the world and the best doctrine in town, but they can't provide real, authentic, something that a millennial can grasp onto, you can be right on everything. They're not going to come. They're not going to tune in online. They're not interested. Is it truth? Millennials would say, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm not going to stick around to find out because it's not real. It's not personal. Couple more stats. These are not on my PowerPoint or in your notes, but these are from Barna, and I'll give you these if you want to write them down. You're welcome to. By 2030, which seems very futuristic, but it's not. By 2030, millennials will represent 75% of the global workforce. I'll say it again. Yeah. Yep. By 2030, millennials will represent 75% of the global workforce. Here's another stat. All these are from Barna that I'm going to share with you if you want to research. 6 out of every 10 churched millennials have dropped out. These are millennials that maybe went to Sunday school when they were kids, or they went to small group or something when they were teens, but now they're adults and they've dropped out. 6 out of 10. Of those 6 out of 10, 35% of those have an anti-church stance. 6 out of 10 church millennials have dropped out. 35% of those 6 of 10 that have dropped out have an anti-church stance. I won't go to church. I won't consider it. I don't want to talk about it. You keep your church. That's for you. But they would say, I've went down that road. It isn't for me. 13% of all millennials consider spirituality relevant. 13%. Those stats are from Barna. If you didn't get them all, I can give them to you after the session. So, how do we improve as millennials? How do we grow past these idiosyncrasies, deficiencies, and immaturities? You can't change millennials, but you can always grow. I'm not looking for you to leave here today and go back to your hometown where you know other millennials and try to change who they are or how they dress or things they say or their lifestyle. But there's always room for us in the room to grow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 4 words for growth to millennials, and I'm going to give 4 words for growth to non-millennials. And for those of you that are millennials, when I talk to non-millennials, that'll help you interact with them. And for you non-millennials, these first 4 words will help you kind of understand. So 4 words to millennials. Here they are. Number 1 is the word preparation. In each of these, I'm going to speak directly to you who are millennials. But I want to preface this approach with a little bit of humility because I'm a millennial just like you. I'm not up here saying, hey, you millennials, you guys need to figure this out. This is not a you problem. It's a we problem. It's a cultural thing. Just because I'm sharing this with you doesn't mean that I've arrived or have mastered these myself. And none of us know it all, so we shouldn't pretend like we do. I've got a man in our church who's in his 50s, and he recently was called to preach and become an army chaplain. And it's neat to see the Lord do something in someone's life, when they're 50. And he said, I want to go out to lunch and pick your brain on preaching. And I said, great, I would love to do that. That would be a lot of fun for me. And so that's what we did, is we went to lunch and we started talking about preaching. And it was crazy, but he would ask me questions about preaching, and it was very basic, like how do you read the Bible, and how do you study the Bible, and how do you prepare sermons, and tell me about this. What do you do with illustrations? Do you use notes? Do you use a PowerPoint? Do you use an iPad? Do you use handwritten notes? Like, what do you do? And I answered some of his questions and just said, this is what I do. This is what works for me. And over the course of conversation, he asked me something, and I don't remember what he even asked me. And I said, that's a good question. I don't know. And he said, what do you mean you don't know? And I said, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that before. And I'll think about it for a couple days, maybe a week or so, and I'll get back with you with what I think my answer would be, but I don't know. And he said, I thought you were a millennial. I thought you guys either know everything or think that you know everything. And I said, well, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, and I'll give it some thought. I'll get back with you, but I'm not just going to make up an answer. And he was shocked. And what I want to say to those of us who are millennials, it's okay to not have all the answers. You may ask me something after the session and say, hey, what did you mean by that? Or where exactly were you going with that? Or what do you think about this? And I may say, hey, I don't know. I don't have it all figured out. You want to ask me a question about marriage? The longer I've been married, the more I realize how much I don't know. I was a great parent up until I had kids. I remember I was a youth pastor for 6 years, and I would see the way that some parents would interact with their teenagers, and I would think, these parents are blowing it. They got it all wrong. I know how to raise a 15-year-old boy. Piece of cake. And then I had kids. And it's like, oh, man, I'm struggling. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm reading parenting books. I'm reading blogs, because marriage is not easy. Parenting's not easy. Ministry's not easy. And if you don't have all the answers, it's okay. You're in good company. None of us do. I'm going to move on to number 2. I'm running short on time. Number 1 is preparation. Number 2 is purpose. Purpose is a huge word for millennials. They don't mind working at a job if they know there's purpose behind it. I'm working towards something that is greater than I am. Why were you created? We talked about identity last night, but millennials wrestle with that, and they want to do something with their lives that is purposeful. Well, the good thing to us who are pastors and church leaders is we have a cause worth living for that is very purposeful. We can share that with them, but it has to be authentic. It has to be real. Many millennials, they're in this in-between stage in ministry and their secular careers. They're no longer the low man on the totem pole. There's been people that have been hired after them. We're not the rookie on a church staff or an organization anymore, but some of us aren't the boss yet. We're not the senior pastor, and we're just kind of stuck in the middle. Some millennials think they've found a purpose, but it turns out to be less than what they had hoped for. In the church world, let me tell you if you've heard this story. A guy goes to Bible college or seminary and then graduates. He goes to work at a church for meager pay. He's working 50 plus hours a week, doing grunt work, not learning to do ministry, just doing whatever his pastor tells him to do, and he does not dare ask why. He's told what to wear, what not to wear. He's told what to tell his wife to wear and what not to wear. What to do, what to think, how to act, what everybody else's church is doing wrong, and he's micromanaged to the hilt. So what does he do? He becomes disillusioned, discouraged, disenfranchised. I don't want to do ministry. Yeah, why would I put up with this? I can make more money doing anything else out in the world and not have to deal with these politics. He's confronted about his disillusionment. He leaves. He's blackballed. He's labeled as a liberal, and he's done. You ever heard that story before? Don't raise your hands. We all have heard that story. Some of us have lived that story. He thought his purpose was in a pastor or in a church or in some job title, and he's totally miffed. Wendell, in his book, says, it is estimated that millennials will have 17 jobs over 5 careers in their lifetime. Sit on that for a minute. It is estimated that millennials will have 17 jobs, over 5 different careers in their lifetime. But millennials will become much happier when they find their identity in something that is eternal, not a title or a position or a movement or another person. Number 3 is the word patience. Patience. Those who wait on the Lord are the ones who renew their strength. Millennials hate waiting. I hate waiting. I tell my kids, I'm going to die at a stoplight one day. I'm sitting there. I've sat there forever. The light finally turns green. Why is this guy not going? He died there. He sat there that long that he's dead. I hate waiting. And maybe that's just people. Here's a quote. This is good. Sustainable success does not happen overnight. Man, that is so good. Wrap your head around it. It's not originally mine. I don't know who said it. Sustainable success does not happen overnight. Now, success can happen overnight. We've all seen a guy on YouTube that no one knew who they were 5 minutes ago. But now the whole world's watching. Things can go viral in a matter of minutes or hours. Success can happen overnight. But sustainable success, which is success in perpetuity, that takes time. Millennials see the summit and they try to bypass the climb. Man, I would love to be up at the summit. I'd love to be up at the top of that mountain. I don't want to climb to get there. We even spiritualize it. God, remove this mountain, cast it into the sea. And God says, if you want that summit, you better start climbing. And that takes patience. Before I say what I have next, I want to say that I am very pro church planting. I love church planting. I believe God's design to reach those who are unreached is through church planting. I surrendered to planting a church if God would have me do that. To this point, He hasn't. And I'm okay with that. I'm open to the idea. Our church just started our first church plant last year. Great timing, right? We had planned it for about 2 years leading up to it. And we wanted to launch Easter 2020. That's the date we circled on the calendar. Easter 2020. Man, we're going to hit it hard. We talked to some friends at NAM and the SBC, and we looked at pockets of lostness. We had an area that we were going to. We sent our former youth pastor, went out as the pastor. God called him to do that. And we sent, I want to say between 70 and 80 people with him to do that church. And man, they had a couple interest meetings, whatever, and they were set to launch in April of 2020. And it was terrible timing, but God's blessed, and they've seen the work grow. And it just goes to show you God's plans are so much bigger than ours. I'm the missions pastor at our church. 80% of our missions dollars goes to foreign church planting missionaries. And of the remaining 20% that goes to domestic, half of those are church planting missionaries. So 90% of our missions budget goes to church planters, whether foreign or domestic. So I love church planting. I'm pro-church planting, okay? I want to say that before I give these stats. The average age of a United States pastor is between 57 and 58 years old. That's according to Barna. And then William Vanderbloemen, if you've ever listened to his podcast, he actually did a podcast with Carrie Nieuwhof recently where he talked about this. The average age of an American pastor is between 57 and 58 years old. A step further, same sources. The average age of the pastor of a megachurch, which is considered 1,000 or more, 62 years old. 57 to 62, kind of that range. So I want you to know this. Here's my point. I am all for church planting, but it seems to me that over the next 3 to 9 years, we're going to have a massive turnover in pastorates. Massive turnover, according to the research. So what I'm saying is, be patient, millennial. Be patient. God's got a designed purpose just for you. He will bring it to pass on His terms and in His timing, not ours. I want it on my terms. I want it in my timing. God never operates that way with me. I would imagine He probably doesn't operate that way with you either. Sometimes it's on my terms, but it's not in my timing. Sometimes it's in my timing, but it is not on my terms. It's never both. It's always on His timetable. I'm all for church planting, but there's going to be massive turnover in pastors. If God calls you to plant a church, do it. But don't do it just because you're dying to be a senior pastor and your pastor won't give you the reins to his ministry yet. I know of guys today who have planted churches. They were not called to do that, and they tried to streamline God's calling to be a pastor in their life. They're in over their heads. They're in over their heads. I'm all for church planting, and if God calls you to do that, do it. But if He doesn't, then don't. A shift is coming. You're late 20s, early 30s. You've been on a church staff for several years. You feel like God wants you to be a pastor, and you are dying to do it. And you feel like maybe this could be it, but you don't have complete peace about it. Just hang tight. I would so much rather have waited and then get the right thing than to jump the gun. I talk to guys all the time that have done that. Hey man, I'm planting a church. How's it going? It's terrible. I don't think God's in it anymore. You think God would have changed His mind about it? You know? It's a tough spot to be in, but I'm telling you, based on the research, based on the average age of the pastors, 10 years from now, all those guys are going to be retired. And they're going to have to give their churches to somebody. They've got buildings that are paid for. They've got members that have been on the roster and tithing for decades. Patience. Number 4 is the word peace. Peace. You will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Isaiah 26:3. Paul instructed us to have a peace that passes our own understanding. Philippians 4:7. Be at peace with God, at peace with ourselves, our bosses, our pastors, our people, the leaders that are under us. We don't have to make everything a fight. You guys know people that just walk around with swords, that they're constantly wiping the blood off of their swords because everything is a fight. I know people like this. I have people in my church like this. I have people I'm related to that are like this. Augustine said this. This is a popular Augustine quote. In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things, charity. Millennials would not translate it this way. In essentials, we speculate. In non-essentials, we exacerbate. And in all things, we dominate. That's what we want to do. That's our quote. That's the millennial translation of Augustine's quote. In essentials, we speculate. We want to examine every little detail. In non-essentials, we exacerbate. We actually make things worse sometimes. We have good intentions, we have a good design, we have a good plan, and somehow we screw it up. And in all things, dominate. We just have to have our way. And that's not the way it should be. 4 words to millennials. 4 words to non-millennials, just in the few minutes that we have left. Number 1 is the word initiative. Initiative. Those of you who are not millennials, but you're constantly working with millennials, I am asking you to take the first step in your relationship with a millennial. Take the initiative. As a millennial, this is the worst phrase that I can hear from my senior pastor. Hey, my door is always open to you. Okay. I'm a millennial. I think that I know it all. I'm not going to walk through your door, because to walk through your door is to admit that I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all together. I'm not just going to waltz into your office. I mean, it's great that I have that kind of access, but I'm not going to use it. Like 2% of millennials hear that statement and then voluntarily walk through the open door. Hey, what do you want me to do here? Hey, can I get some clarity here? We don't have it all figured out. And to those of you who are non-millennials, who are older than us, I want to say we would love your input and we would appreciate your wisdom and mentorship, because we rarely take the first step in our relationships with an older non-millennial. We don't do it well. We don't ask for help well. Number one, initiative. Number two, the word is incentivize. The common currency is always money. No matter where you work, what country you operate in, money is universal. Maybe you're a non-millennial senior pastor. What do millennials want out of their jobs other than purpose? They want a raise. They want more money. What millennial, what person has ever been told, hey, I'd like to give you a raise? And they're like, nah, man, I'm good. Seriously. Use the money somewhere else. If you gave me more pay, I don't even know what I'd do with it all. I'd have to throw it around on like a boat or a jet ski or something. I don't want to do that. What kind of a hassle is that? I don't want all that noise. No one ever does that. But you can't give millennials always, more pay. You lead an organization or church. What can you give them instead? Some companies are appealing to the weirdness of millennials by offering unique perks within their organization, such as more vacation days. This is something my pastor's done. We give you more vacation days. I'm going to give you more travel time, personal days, retreats. Some churches are putting in coffee bars just for their staff. Video games. I think you mentioned video games earlier. Bean bags. We don't have a conference room with a bunch of bean bags in it, but I know of churches that have bought more bean bags than they do conference room chairs. And I think it's weird. It doesn't work for us, but hey, maybe it works for them. I'm going to read you this list, and if you're a senior pastor, don't be mad at me. These are the Google employee perks. And you can read this online. Here's what Google does for their employees. They offer free food and free cooking classes. They have on-site gyms and massage therapists. They have on-site medical staff. They have on-site laundry and free haircuts. They have decompression capsules. These are soundproof, light-proof pods to take a nap during the day. Isn't that amazing? A couple more. They have a death benefit. If an employee dies while being employed by Google, the spouse will receive 50% of their salary for the next 10 years. And the children of that employee receive $1,000 a month until age 19. All that's public access. Look it up on Google. I'm getting there. I said, who's ready to quit and apply for Google? They have a rec room, pool table, foosball, ping pong, arcade games, rock climbing. Here's what I'm saying to you that are pastors. You can't do that stuff. You can't do all that stuff. But you can find something to incentivize the millennials that are working with you that's not just more pay. Because if you don't do something to incentivize your millennial employees, they'll leave. You'll lose an employee, you'll lose a pastor, but greater, you'll miss an opportunity to shape your church's organization for future generations. You'll miss a chance to do that. They'll leave because they're already leaving. Newsflash, millennials are not sticking around for the 10-year middle management level assistant pastor position. There aren't 25 tenured youth pastors anymore. I knew of one who had been a youth pastor at his church for 30 years. He retired from it last year. There aren't anymore. Their parents, the boomers, they'll work for 35 years for a fountain pen. Okay? We're not doing that today. We're not doing that. We don't even use pens. Find a better way to incentivize your millennials. Number 3 is the word investment. Investment. About a year ago, I sat down with a church planner who was looking for financial support. He only had a handful of churches that were supporting him, and the main church that was supporting financially was going to stop supporting him financially because they had issues with COVID and funds and things like that. And we're talking, and one of the things I said to him was, I said, when we look at missions dollars, we don't look at it so much as an invoice as much as an investment. Okay, we want to have an investment in your church. There's another church planner who started a church in Boulder, and we took him on for a 3-year term. We will support you monthly for 3 years. And we're currently on year 5 of that commitment because he's killing it. And we want an investment in him. It's not just a check that we sign. We want to make an investment in other people. Number 4 is the word innovation. Innovation. One more thought on investment that I missed. Wendell says this in his book, 3 out of 4 millennials, 75% roughly, said that they would welcome a leader to come beside them and teach them leadership skills, but they would never ask for it. Take the initiative, make the investment. Number 4, innovation. This one takes some humility to non-millennials, but if you're a non-millennial and you have a millennial in your life, It'll take some humility. Ask them to teach you something. You have no idea how a millennial feels when a non-millennial superior comes to them and says, hey, show me how to do a story on Instagram. I don't understand stories. Like, it was there and now it just disappeared. Can you show me? Hey, this TikTok thing that you kids are doing? No, maybe that's a bad example. Ask millennials to teach you something. They don't know it all, but they know a lot more than we give them credit for. The internet isn't going away. Live stream services, social media, podcasting, it's all here to stay. Let the millennial generation teach you. Seek to grow where they have skills to offer. I'm out of time, but continuing the conversation, I think I gave some questions there. Continuing the conversation, 3 questions to millennials and 3 questions to non-millennials. Let me just read these. And if you have an opportunity to get together, you're a millennial and you have the opportunity to get together with a non-millennial, these are great discussion questions that just continue the conversation. What's your toughest struggle with non-millennials? Why do you feel this way? What millennial stereotype does not apply to you? Are there any non-millennials in your inner circle? If not, what will you do to change that? We're better together. You're a millennial, you ought to have some non-millennials in your inner circle. They'll help you. Same is true for non-millennials. What's your biggest frustration with these guys? Why is that? What's one lesson you've learned from millennial? Are there any millennials in your inner circle? If not, what will you do to change that? I hope I've given you some thoughts that you can take with you, discussion, conversation, some points to talk about. But I'm done. If you have any questions, I'll be up here. Thank you guys for coming and enjoy the sessions the rest of the day.
Thanks so much for listening to today's Idea Talks. If you would like to reach out to us, drop us an email at joshtice@ideanetwork.church. If you benefited from this podcast, we ask that you take a moment to show your support by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on iTunes. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you right here again at the Idea Talks podcast.